After discussing the business process, after discussing the business process, what are the steps, what are the activities involved in the business process, what are the documents and purpose of each documents and risk and other subtopics you should understand under business process topic. In the business process, we discuss about the internal control aspect. So now, internal control examples we already discussed under business process. So now time to discuss other aspects of internal controls. If I ask a question, just let me know about. Just tell me about sales process internal controls, purchase process internal controls. Then you will be able to answer the internal controls examples. Invoice approval, quotation approval, sales order approval. Sales order creation itself, it's an internal control. So don't misunderstand. Only approval parts are related to internal controls. Okay. Generating documents also internal control. So you learned about the purposes. You have learned about the purposes of each and every document. So that purpose is objective of the document. So creating or generating the document itself, internal control. Okay. So after that, checked by accountant or checked by authorized person and approved by authorized person, those things, segregation of duties. Okay. Those things will come under segregation of duties. We will discuss in detail later. So approval part and checking part also internal control, and creating the documents also internal control. So don't misunderstand, only approval and checking parts are only internal controls. Creating documents, whatever you have learned in the business processes, purchase, sales, cash, inventory, PP, and payroll, whatever documents you discuss, those documents itself internal control. Why we are generating documents? In order to achieve an objective, some purpose only. In order to achieve some purpose only, we have generated documents. So first thing, you should be able to provide, after discussing business process and internal controls, you should be able to provide examples of internal controls. That is first one. Second one, why organization should implement internal controls? Why organization should implement internal controls? Yeah. Before discussing, already we discussed these objectives. Before discussing the technical matter, just think about the general aspect, the general view. If you want to, let's take your example. Why you put passwords for your Facebook and WhatsApp, and why you put password for your online bank? So through that, you want to reduce the risk. Okay? Through that, by reducing the risk, in order to reduce the risk, you have to achieve the objective. By achieving the objective only, by reducing the risk, you are going to achieve the objective. What is the objective of putting password? To reduce the risk. What type of risk? Hackers risk. Hacking risk. Okay. So unknown party, unknown party, third party should not access your details. If you take a bank password thing, third party should not access your details. That's a simple objective. That's the risk. What's the risk? Hacking risk. What's the objective? Third party should not access your details. For that purpose only, you are creating passwords. So likewise, every transaction, every activity in the business processes, they have internal control. Okay. You can see internal control, but every transaction, every business process has the internal control. So every internal control has intended objective. Okay. Mukut objective at internal control have place no. Because if you want to place internal control, you should incur cost. Without cost, it can be time cost, it can be monetary cost. If you want to implement internal control, then you should incur a cost. Then mokut benefit tag company kita mokut benefit tag cost tag incur karla internal control have place no. So let's say you don't have any risk. For example, if you don't put password for your online banking, that's no any risk because hacking risk is not there. Let's assume hacking risk is not there. If you put or if you don't put, it doesn't matter. No one will hack your online bank. Let's say in that scenario, then do you need to put a password? Then name a password hacking system. Assumption hacking system desktop mobile phone laptop online bank access control. So third party cannot log into your bank. Then do you need to put password? No need. So internal controls must be put in order to reduce the risk. Okay. So in order to reduce the risk, companies place internal controls. So in order to reduce the risk, okay, each and every control has intent and objective. So what I'm trying to say is you should keep in your mind this point very clearly. Each and every internal control has its specific objective. In order to achieve that objective only, internal controls are created. Internal controls are placed. Okay, that part I want to emphasize you. You should keep in your mind each and every internal control has objective. By that internal control has objective, that internal control should reduce the risk. Okay, so here internal controls have objective. That's called intended objective. Okay, internal controls, each and every internal control, generating PO, generating sales order, or generating GRN, generating sales invoices, dispatch note, whatever document. Each and every document has purpose or objective. Okay. That objective should relate to risk. In order to mitigate the risk only, first you have to reduce the risk. In order to first you have to identify the risk. Risk को identify करना तो internal control base करना होगा. Password है इधर in order to protect your online banking system. Okay. So first you have identified the risk. Okay. First you have identified the risk and objective you have to protect. Risk is hacking. Objective is protection. Okay. So now risk and objective you identify. Clear? Not only password, whatever internal control you can apply this flow. If you have internal control, definitely that internal control related object risk is there. So purpose is mitigating the risk. Okay, mitigate the risk. So first you identify the risk, which means you should identify the risk, and objective is mitigating that risk. And in order to mitigate that risk, you have to implement internal control. Okay, this concept I have not given you the due, but first understand why internal control is important. Okay, why internal control is important. Rather than discussing only the technical aspect, first of all, you should understand about the logic behind in the internal control. So why internal control is important? First, you identify the risk. So in order to mitigate that risk, you have to implement a control. So that control should have objective. Okay, what's the objective? Through that objective only, you are going to reduce the risk. Okay, you identify that objective is there. Risk also should be connected to that objective, and internal control you are going to implement. In order to achieve that objective, you are going to place the internal control. So after implementing the internal control, mitigate risk. Okay, after implementing the internal control, through that internal control, you are going to mitigate the risk. After mitigating the risk, you are going to achieve the objective, achieve the intended objective. Clear? You have objective. You should connect that objective and risk. Okay. You have the risk. That's why you are going to implement the internal control. So objective is there. What's the, let's say, example? Why you need to send sales order in a written format? Why sales orders are created in written form? Why we should send sales order? What's the purpose of sending sales order? Sales order purpose is and you want questions answers. The sales order. What's the purpose of sales order? Generating sales order. Confirmation of order. So you can confirm the order. You have many ways to confirm the order. You can You can send through the WhatsApp, you can send through mail, you can send through over the phone verbally, you can tell, or through the sales order, you can send. So then, what's the purpose? Why we should send through the document form? Which means written format. Why we should send sales order in written format? Right? Already we discussed. Let's say simple. Don't think too much. Simple thing. Let's say you are a supplier. I'm a customer. I want to confirm an order from you. Then if I tell through over the phone, if you don't mark that in written format, then you may forget. Or else, that's one risk. Second one, if I tell you through verbally or over the phone, once you send the order, send the goods, I can say, no, I didn't put the order. These are the risks. If these things happen, what will happen? These things happen in the organization. What's the implication? Customer relationship will be damaged. Sometimes you may incur cost to sell the, not me, you will incur cost to sell the goods. That cost also you can't get back. So these are the risks. So in order to reduce this risk, first you identify the risk. Sometimes I may forget the order. So in order to mitigate this risk, first I want to set my objective. What's my objective? I should not forget the order. In order to achieve that objective, I should place the internal control. By placing that internal control, I can mitigate that risk. By mitigating that risk, I can achieve my objective. This is the relationship of internal control and risk. Okay, clear? So, first of all, you should understand this concept. After that, we discuss about the objective of internal controls. What are the objectives? Whatever internal controls, main three objectives are there. From those main objectives, some intended objectives can be created specifically for each and every internal control. What are those main objectives? Every internal control, whatever internal control has out of these three objectives: enhance reliability of financial reporting, enhance efficiency and effectiveness of internal business operation, and ensure the compliance of self-regulation. Whatever internal control you pick, that particular internal control has one of these objectives. That particular internal control has intended objective. Okay, directly you can't connect to these objectives. That intended objective is there. That intended objective can be classified out of these three objectives. Let's say, for example, payment vouchers should be approved by finance manager. Okay, I will give example. Payment voucher must be approved by the finance manager of the organization. What's the objective of this internal control? It's called specific objective, intended objective. Payment voucher must be approved by the finance manager. What is the objective of that internal control? Mistakes and frauds should be avoided, which means correct amount should be paid. Any control objective, which means correct amount should be paid. Fraud and mistakes. Mistake man venna puluwan, වැරදි වෙන්න පුළුවන් ක්‍රම මොනවද දෙකක්? එකක් fraud and දෙක mistakes. So avoid or mitigate, I can't say eliminate, reduce the risk of mistakes and fraud. For that, FM finance manager should approve the payment voucher. So this is the intended objective of that particular control. So this intended objective, where you can classify out of these three, enhance the reliability of financial reporting. If you make correct payment, then that will be reflected in the PAT statement in correct amount. Okay. So likewise, each and every internal control has specific intent and objective. That intent and objective you can classify out of these main objectives. So last class we covered this point, and we have started to discuss about control environment, which means it's part of control elements. So what are the control elements? Sorry, what are the elements in internal control? What are the 5 controls? 5 elements in internal control. Control environment. Status one. Third one, control activities, information and communication, and last one is monitoring. What is meant by elements? I explained short while ago is objective, risk, mitigating risk, and achieving objective. So you should understand each and every internal control has intended objective. If that intended objective is achieved by the particular internal control, then successful control. That control is successful. Which means, in technically we can say that control is effective and efficient. Okay, clear? If that particular internal control achieves its intended objective, then that's a successful internal control. Technically, we can say that control is effective and efficient. Here, so in order to achieve that target, if the organization's controls to place fail when on place rule responsibility control place and whatever they are taking, whatever actions they are taking, they should have objective to achieve that, and through that action they have to achieve some objectives. Okay. So likewise, internal controls also same theory we can apply. Each and every internal control has intended objective. If you want to place that internal control in your organization, your final objective should be that internal control must achieve its intended objective, which means that internal control must be a successful control. It's your final objective. So, how that particular internal controls can be, successful internal controls. How that particular internal controls can be a successful internal control. If you want to achieve a successful internal control, successful understand purpose technically effective and efficiency. Okay, so if that internal control should be a successful internal control, those internal controls, okay, that particular internal controls or set of internal controls must be designed or must be implemented. Those internal controls must consider these elements. Okay, these elements. In order to, let's say, if a company has 10 internal controls, for example, if that company wants to achieve intended objective of those 10 internal controls, which means if that company wants to make those internal controls as successful internal controls, effective and efficiency of internal control, effective and efficiency internal controls, then that organization should consider these elements. Okay, these elements will support to achieve that intended objective. If a company considers these elements, then that company can achieve a successful internal control. Be clear? First of all, you should understand about why we are learning elements. Okay, if you want to, let's say you are in an organization. In your organization, you want to implement 10 internal controls. For example, that internal control should achieve its intended objective. That internal controls must be effective and efficient internal controls. Okay, which means that internal controls should achieve its intended objective. So, if you want those internal controls should be efficiently and effective internal control, then while you are designing, while you are implementing, after implement, you should consider these elements. If you consider these elements, according to that, if you work, then you can achieve that target. Clear? First, we have discussed about control environment. What is meant by control environment? Environment which internal controls operate. Okay. Environment which internal control operates for control environment. So, why control environment is important? Last class we discussed control environment means controls which operate environment which control operates control environment. So why control environment is important? Because here first head of the organization, head of the company should think, yes, I need strong controls. I want to implement strong controls. First of all, he should think that. Overall exam and pass when no, overall exam think करना. First steps करना नहीं करने क्या? Step 5 step study, question practice. Answers to the steps. Okay, first of all, you should have mind. I want to pass the exam. I want to get A+. I want to get A. Likewise, you should first think. You should have that attitude. According to that, you should implement your actions. Okay, first you have to think that. That's your culture. So likewise, head of the operation, head of the organization. Who is the head of organization? Who is the head of organization? Who is head of organization? Directors. Okay. Head of the organization, board of directors. Head of the operations. So that person should think, yes, I want to implement internal control properly. Sometimes if he thinks, no, I don't need to implement internal controls, whatever payment comes, no issue to, no need to check by FM, no need to check by finance controller, account level, you can pass the payment. If he thinks like that, bottom, low level people cannot implement the controls. Whether if directors think like that, then management can bypass their rule. Let's say directors think, no, we don't need to implement the internal controls. That is useless. Okay, those internal controls will not help to our organization and our operation. If they have in that mindset, whether bottom level people, next level people, let's say management, senior management, whether they can implement the internal controls without getting the permission from directors. Can they do that one? They can't do. Suppose they have to give the approval. They have to, directors, board of directors should give the approval to implement, design and implement the internal controls. First of all, the base is control environment. Directors should think, yes, we need to implement. We need to implement strong internal controls. So first basic element, head of the operation, head of the organization, they should have good objectives in relation to the internal control. If they think internal controls are no needed, those are useless to us, it's time-based, cost incurring process. If they think like that, Next level people cannot implement the internal controls. Next level people cannot implement the internal controls. Okay, they can't bypass the director's rule. Okay? So you should understand first, for internal control implementation, basic important point is top level people, which means board of directors should have positive mindset about the strong internal control. Here, their attitudes, their actions, their behavior. In short form, we can say culture of the directors or organization. Okay. We'll on a point taken. So first of all, you should understand culture of the directors, organization, their attitudes, directors' attitudes, their actions, their thought process towards the implementation of internal controls. Okay. The control environment is the framework within which controls operate. The control environment is very much determined by the management of business. Control environment includes the governance and management functions and attitudes, awareness and actions of those charged with governance. Those charged with governance. Wherever you see this word, those charged with governance, don't get confused. Just understand. Those charged with governance means board of directors. Governance giving govern current company, govern current. How they responsible to govern the company? Board of directors. Which means those charged with governance. Governance and management concerning the entity's internal control and its importance in them. First of all, they should feel, yes, internal controls are important to the organization. Same example you can put in your case. First, you should have confident or idea to pass the examination. Okay, then only you can work towards that. So likewise, first of all, board of directors should have positive mindset about the strong internal control. They think, okay, we need to implement strong internal control. Through that, we can reduce the risk. Through that, we can achieve the objectives. If they think this positive attitude, that is the first step in relation to internal control implementation. Not only this one, they can think like money. Elements of known. Okay, base element. First basic point is, first of all, head of organization should have good mindset. Their culture should be positive in relation to internal control. Third point, a strong internal environment, a strong control environment does not by itself ensure the effectiveness of the overall internal control system. Okay. Internal control is the basic main element. Okay, basic main element. If board of directors, if directors think only, next levels can be implemented. If they think we don't need to implement internal control, we don't need internal control to our organization, then next level people cannot implement those things. Okay. So that's the basic first step. But a strong control environment does not by itself. Elements strong internal environment, strong internal control system implement. If with strong control environment, if other elements also important, other elements and strong internal controls are combined, then only organization can achieve effective and efficient internal control system. Okay, a strong control environment does not by itself ensure the effectiveness of the overall internal control system, but can be a positive factor when assessing the risk of material misstatement. So here, strong control environment. What is meant by strong control environment? Control environment we discussed. What is meant by strong control environment? Strong control environment means director should think, yes, we need good internal control system. That positive approach. Okay, that means their actions and their awareness, their functions, their attitudes, their culture should be should be linked to positive internal control system. They should be in strong internal control system. So that's a strong internal control environment. Okay. But strong internal control environment itself cannot implement the strong internal control system. It needs other elements as well. Clear? So now we will discuss about the risk assessment. Risk assessment. Others are straightforward, no issue. Okay. Control environment is only the little bit critical part when it comes to elements. Others are straightforward. Risk assessment means the heading itself explains the definition. Risk assessment means what are the operational risks, internal and external. First, we have to analyze the risk. What are the risks? Risk available internal control implement. So, what are the risks available internally and external in the organization, in relation to the organization? So, we have to find those risk factors or risk internally and external. First, we have to identify the risk. Next stage, analysis. We have to assess. How we can assess? This requires management to consider the impact of possible changes in internal and external environment and potentially take action to manage the impact. Risk assessment should take account of the probability of change occurring as well as the potential impact. Did you learn about risk assessment in management subject? Have you learned risk assessment or managing risk in management subject in level 1 or level 2? First of all, you should identify the risks available, risks which will affect to the organization, internal or external. Okay. First, you should identify internal risk and external risk. Internal external risk internal and external risk. First, you have to identify. And most important thing, occurrence of that risk. Frequency. And regularly important. Sometimes those risks cannot be happen repetitively, but if it is happen at one time, the impact is huge. Negative impact is huge. Sometimes certain risks are occurred frequently. Probability is high, but impact is low. Sometimes certain risks frequency is low, which means probability is low, but even though that risk is happened one time, impact is very high. So this assessment called risk assessment. Internal, external impact, internal, external risk factors, how these risk factors are occurred and what's the impact. Okay. If that risk is happened, what's the negative result to the organization? Those analysis called risk assessment. After assessing the risk, this type of assessment only, they should implement the proper controls. If it is a low risk, do they need to implement the controls? Or minimal risk, do they need to implement the controls? No need. Or else they can put small level of controls. They no need to put high level of controls or low level risk. High level risk, they should implement strong controls. Medium level risk, according to that, they should implement. Low level risk, they don't need to implement strong controls. They should implement light controls. Sometimes they can implement light controls, otherwise they can ignore the controls also. Depends on case. Okay. So here, risk assessment means what are the internal, external risks involved in organization operation and frequency of those risks, occurrence of those risks, probability of occurrence, and impact of those risks must be analyzed. It's called risk assessment. Clear? Based on risk assessment, we have to place the internal control. Control activities. Control activities being what we have discussed in the business processes. Example, we have discussing. So control activity separate topic is there. I will come to later that point. Fifth topic is control activities, which means control procedures. I will come to later that point. Control activities means your control. In the business process, we learn about controls. So internal control, sales process we will discuss, purchase process we discuss. Those controls called controls activities. Separately, we have topic I will give approval, arithmetic accuracy, checking, segregation of duties. Those are the control activities. Okay. So simply you can understand whatever we learn on the business process control examples, internal control examples, those are the control activities. Document creation, approval process, checking process. That three-way matching concept we discussed now. If we take sales, what are the three documents we have to consider? Sales order, delivery note, invoice. When it comes to purchase process, what are the documents we have to consider? Purchase order, GRN, invoice. So these all activities called internal controls. Those controls called control activities. Next topic, information. Fourth one. Fourth element is information and communication. Information and communication. What is meant by information and communication? After all, three elements we discussed. First one, control environment, little bit tricky point. Second one, risk assessment. What is meant by risk assessment? First, you have to identify the internal and external factors which affect to the organization and probability of occurrence and impact of those internal and external risks. That analysis is called risk assessment. Third point, control activities, which means examples already we discussed in the business process. Few examples you can write, but technical thing we will discuss later. Control activities. Fourth point, information and communication. Fourth element, information and communication. Let's take an example. You are a director of company. Let's say you and your friend, both of you are director of company, directors of company. Let's say ABC Private Limited, you are directors plus shareholders. Forget about the shareholder part, directors. Under you, managers are there. Three managers are there. Let's say finance manager, production manager, marketing manager. It's a small company. You are a directors, you and your friend, both of you are directors, and under you, managers, three managers are there. Who are those managers? Production manager, finance manager, and marketing manager. Under them, supervisors are there. After that, employees are there. Let's say altogether 50 employees are there under you. It's a small company. A small company internal control on in the bank. Control level strong. Then John Hills, Hayes structure other anything like Okalangi level risk analysis you have to implement the controls. Okay. Let's assume you are the director, your control environment is strong. But you have positive attitude about internal controls. You need to implement strong internal controls. Okay. Payment process must be checked by you. Okay. Payment process must be checked by you. Since you are a private organization, direct control you have direct control. Let's assume you have direct control. Each and every payments must be approved by you. And if you want to sell the items, then invoice must be approved by you, or invoice must be approved by the marketing manager. If every payment, every purchase payment must be checked by the accountant, finance manager. After that only, he should pass to you. So these are the controls you want to implement in your organization. Clear the name? This is your control environment. You are a person, director, then Oyakila ban of Mukaran. This idea you have, you need to implement this controls in your organization. That is strong control environment. You have positive attitude towards the internal control implementation. Now, what a different implement karana puluwan. What a positive attitude here. You have positive attitude towards the internal control. That's okay, that's fine. What a vitara, without other support, do you think you can implement the controls? Let's take simple control. All the payments must be approved by you. All the payments must be checked by finance manager. All payment vouchers must be generated by accountant. Let's say accountant. So these things must be, this is your control. It's the control you want to implement your organization. Then always implement then what you implement do you think without other supports can you implement these internal controls? Cannot. Because accountant support you need to implement those controls, finance manager support you need, accounts clerk support you need. First of all, he only receives the invoices. Then he has to pass those invoices to accountant. So this process should be properly designed. In order to design this proper process and controls, you need other support. Without your other subordinates and your bottom level people support, you can't implement those controls. So you and your management team should communicate what are the operational risks available in your organization and what are the controls going to implement. Okay, what are the operational risks available in your organization? What are the controls we are going to implement to mitigate these risks? And roles and responsibility of each and every employee. Roles and responsibilities. To be communicated, which means first, what are the operational risks? What are the controls to mitigate those risks? And in respect of each and every controls, what are the roles and responsibilities of employees also should be communicated. Clear? That is called information and communication. Clear? Let's say in the payment process, you are the ultimate party to approve your company. Finance manager should approve. Accountant should check. Accounts clerk should prepare the payment voucher. So you should tell accounts clerk, accountant, finance manager. These are the roles and responsibilities in relation to the payment process, payment internal controls. So these must be likewise every internal control process, every internal controls involved in the processes must be communicated. Roles and responsibilities must be communicated to each and every employees. Whoever take part in the process, these roles and responsibility and operational and control things must be communicated to employees, top to bottom and across the organization. Clear? That is called information and communication. An effective internal control system requires that information about risk and control should be communicated to the relevant people in the timely fashion. Information about operational risk and control should be communicated to the people who are responsible for applying the controls. The communication system should be capable of communicating top to bottom, top to down, bottom to up, and across the organization as well. Communication tools. What are the tools organization can use? Email. You can see. Anyway, you are going to start to do your assignment now. When you are doing your assignment, read करा assignment है, upload करा, read करा, physically visit करा नोन नहीं, organization है company है. So once you visit to the organization or company, or let's say company, once you visit to the company, you can ask procedure manual. Okay. Wait, you can ask procedure manual, but sometimes they won't provide. Confidential is a key and then summary key and then assignment concept taker, you have to take each group should take 2 processes. Okay, and you have to understand the process and flow chart you have to give and internal controls involved in those processes and strategies, sorry, challenges and strategies you have to write. In order to get these details, you have to visit company and you have to interview a person there. Assessment. So while you are discussing, you can ask procedure manual. Procedure manual means these processes, internal controls are documented in written form and that will be given to the employees. It can be soft copy or it can be hard copy, doesn't matter. But the concept is procedure manual. Each and every processes are documented. Each and every process are documented in the written form. Okay. You can ask, but sometimes they may give, sometimes they may not give because of confidential purpose. But anyway, you have to discuss with them and you have to get the process and internal control challenges and strategies. Okay. So you can ask, sometimes they may give, but you should understand that's a document called procedure manual. Through that also, you can communicate these things to the employees. So communication tools, email, intranet, electronic notice boards, as well as online system that can be used to document risk and associated controls which are accessible to employees across the business. Okay. Under information and communication topic, element, you have to remember 3 things. First one, what are the things you are going to communicate? Risk and controls. What are the risks you are having in the organization? What are the controls you should implement to mitigate those risks? And responsibilities, roles and responsibilities of employees in relation to the control implementation. And third one, what are the tools you can use to communicate these things? Email, intranet, and electronic notice boards. If you remember only 2 or 3, that's enough. Okay. Let's remember email, intranet, and electronic notice board. Subtopic: information communication. Have you learned about whistleblowing anywhere? Whistleblowing. Whistleblowing की नहीं मालूम. Technical होता है. Whistleblowing ना मालूम. Whistleblowing ना मालूम. करला मैंने ना whistleblowing ना मालूम क्या है? Whistleblowing मालूम. टाइप करा पर whistleblowing ना मालूम क्या है? Google में अपने ChatGPT dan Google द्वारा लेकर नहीं है whistleblowing ना मालूम क्या टाइप पर. सलाम एक दान एक पोटा technical. एक ना खाली whistleblowing ना मालूम. वाला क्या? ये ना ChatGPT का. ये ना assignment एक ना ChatGPT का आने पास है. वो बहुत मोटा सा तो मैं इंटर अननोन है. इंटरव्यू करते हो. मामू को ये मामू शेयर करा मैं करूँ. ग्रुप डिटेल्स दिखा. शाफुल का मामू को दे मैंने. और ऑर्डर करता मैं दान भी. एक काउ तो इन्ना वाला किलो पड़ता नहीं इसने. उसको मैं 88 आवा. उन्होंने टीम में के उन्होंने इश्यूज ना कंप्लीट करना टुडे एंड टुमारो. ओके. अंतिम होकर का इन्हें पा. I just assign the group based on the your attendance. Details से दिए नहीं. Let me say कि ये कितना में करती है. 10 people. ये कि class एक रहना करती है का उधर actively ना करती है. ये प्रश्न है कहीं नहीं होगा. थोड़ा बारह ने each group पे का बारह ना उन्होंने issues से उन्होंने पता करा. एक short out කරගන්න ඕනේ අද එක. නැත්නම් ඕගොල්ලන් ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්න මොන ප්‍රශ්නයක් මොන ඉෂුස් තියෙනවා. අනිත් බැචස් වල ඒගොල්ලන්ම ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්න. දැන් බලන්නකො දැන් බලන්න එපා. බලලා මට ඒක කියන්න. So what is mean by whistleblowing? Okay, unethical behavior, okay, fine. But just whistleblowing කියන එක මොනවද කියන්නේ? මම technical පැත්තෙන් ඕනේ නැහැ. Technical පැත්ත discuss කරමු. What is mean by whistleblowing? Whistleblowing means technical, okay, technical we will discuss. ඔයවත් යන්නේ නැහැ ටියුට් එක whistleblowing නම් මොනවද? ඉතින් ඉතින් ගන්න එක ඉච්චරයි වෙන මොකුත් නැහැ. දැන් කාඩ් හරි අඩ ගන්නවා නම් කොහොමද අඩ ගන්නේ? එකක් නම කියලා අඩ ගන්නවා. නැත්නම් පැක් කරලා අඩ ගන්නවා. නැත්නම් ඉස්ලැක් ගන්නවා. මොනවාද කරනවනේ? ඒක තමයි whistleblowing කියන්නේ. ඒක මයින්ඩ් එකේ තියාගන්න. ඒකත් එක්ක මේක ඩිස්කස් කරමු. Let's say you are working in an organization. Then normal definition can not whistleblowing now. Okay. Let's say you are working in an organization. In that organization, 10 employees are there. Okay. Let's say, or else take a finance department. In the organization, you are working in a finance department. In that finance department, 10 employees are there. Clear the scenario. First point. You are accountant. Top of let's say you are assistant accountant. You are an assistant accountant. In that company, 3 assistant accountants are there. 3 assistant accountant, finance manager. Let's assume altogether 10 employees are there. Let's say you are one of assistant accountants. So including you, 3 assistant accountants are there. Top of you, you are reporting to accountant reporting to finance manager. Top of him, finance controller, FD, those people are there. So now you have identified another assistant accountant as involved in illegal activity. Okay. First scenario the second step. You have theory එක බලන්න එපා. විරෝධයක් තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒක රීඩ් කරමු. හරිද? ඒක විතරක් රීඩ් කරොත් තේරෙන්නේ. You have identified or you have got to know one of your assistant accountants, your subordinate, has involved illegal case. Let's say he has taken a bribe man, some personal benefit. He has incorrectly he has mentioned the payment amount. Okay, because of the personal interest. He has mentioned incorrectly the payment amount. Let's say instead of 100,000 payment, he has made 130,000. 30,000 he will take and 100,000 will go to supplier. So scenario. Let's say simple scenario. And you got to know this point. It's illegal activity. You have got to know some other sources. මොනවද කරන්නේ? ඒක කමිෂන් එකක් ගන්නවා නැත්නම් කියලා කියනවා. ඇත්ත කියන්නේ. 30,000 එකකින් කමිෂන් එකක් ගන්නවනේ. අවදානිය ඔය වෙනවා. You are one of the assistant accountant. You are also assistant accountant. One of your assistant accountants category, one person has involved in this illegal activity. He has overstated the payment. Instead of 100,000, he has made 130,000 because 30,000 is if company pays 130,000 to the supplier, 30,000 will be given to him. That's how scenario is created. Okay. So this you got to know. What's the next step we will take? මේකත් එක තමයි දැන් මොකද එවිඩන්ස් එකත් එක්කම ඔයා ගත්තා එවිඩන්ස් එකක් නැතුව කියන්න බෑ නේද එවිඩන්ස් එකත් ගත්තා මොනවද කරන්නේ හොඳ දෙයක් කරන කොච්චර එකනවා නේද හරි then now you are thinking okay I am going to report to this illegal activity to superior finance manager okay you have decided Okay, you are going to report this illegal activity to your superior. Now, you have doubt. You have a doubt. If I tell you that this illegal activity to superior, sometimes that superior also might be involved in this illegal activity. If that case, what will happen? Yeah, take a dinner make a what a comfort zone app in a Pulwang environment, organization environment, promotion, some in a So, this comfort zone will be created by those people. Sometimes, if that finance manager also involved, then what about then kill again? They don't know what will happen to the organization. They is our income. Inform what are the organization because you are scared to tell this illegal activity to your finance manager because you have doubt whether finance manager also involved this activity. If you tell to this matter to finance manager, then finance manager is subordinate. Create discomfort zone, discomfort things to your work environment. Because of that, you are not going to tell this illegal activity to your superior. Because of this action, what will happen to the organization? अंतिम 30,000 loss है ना ये वही 30,000 में किया loss में लगा था net आणि ते fraud करने के ना first activity में वो इन्हें वो है ना खावा वो है ना गलत किया personal experience किया ना वो है ना अबे first incident क्या हुई पुरुष के नॉन नहीं है तेरा होता कराटा पसे 30,000 3 million कराटा पसे ना हुई अबे आने वाले हुए ये वो गलत किया ना then maybe some company loss. So company loss in the bank. The company also should not incur any loss because of this illegal activity. At the same time, the person who informed to the superior of company, that person also should not be affected. Because of that, company will appoint the independent person, third person or independent person for whistleblower. You can tell to that person or group of persons, a group of people or single person. You can tell this incident to that person, and that person will keep your information secret. He won't disclose to anyone. If you tell to finance manager or finance control, what will happen? If you tell to that person, then that person will keep your information secret manner. Then you won't get any effect. You won't get any negative impact over your job role and your working environment. If the company appoints a whistleblower, then company also can achieve. Company also can save that 30,000. At the same time, you also will not get any negative impact from your subordinates. Okay, both sides objective can be achieved. So that's why organizations appoint whistleblower. A whistleblower का name में या तमाय illegal activity का whistle करला पेन है क्या highlight करला पेन है. That's why the name called whistleblower. That independent person or group of people. Okay, that person only highlight. That person only inform that communication, that information to authorized persons. Okay. Anyway, you only told this illegal activity to that person, but because of that person only, you have told no. If that person is not available, means what will happen? You won't tell. Okay, if that person is not there, means you won't tell. It's because you are scared to tell. If company appoints that type of person, then you can, without scare, you can tell to this illegal activity to that person. Then that person will communicate to responsible party. So company side also objective can be achieved. Your side also no any negative impact. And that's why we call that person or group of people whistleblower. That person will highlight or that person will communicate illegal activity to the responsible person. There is a risk in many organizations. Concept is clear, Mani? Clear, any doubt? There is a risk in many organizations that one or more individually will behave improperly, possibly committing a fraud or another crime, such as accepting a bribe from a supplier in return for placing the purchase contract with the supplier. Not only this one, other it's also there. Colleagues may be aware of the wrongdoing, but afraid to report it to a senior manager. They may be afraid that by reporting the wrongdoing, knowing the risk, they afraid to inform this illegal activity. Their manager and colleagues will accuse them of disloyalty and telling tales. They will not be given any opportunity for further advancement or promotion within the organization. In such situation, there is an operational risk event. The fraud or other crime occurs because information is not communicated to a manager who should be responsible for dealing with the problem. To overcome this problem, companies may establish whistleblowing systems that enables employees to report wrongdoing by colleagues or managers in confidence to an independent person. Okay. A whistleblowing system is therefore a form of internal control that seeks to reduce the risk that information about wrongdoing by employees will not go unreported and undetected. Concept is clear now? So that's why I told, without considering this discussion, if you read this one, you can understand. The concept is simple. 2 lines you can explain. Independent person should be appointed to collect illegal activities happening in the organization. Because why that independent person should be appointed? Because if employees, that person also work in the particular organization. Okay. Everything independent person. Okay. It depends. Let's say don't think too much. Independent person. Okay. You are reporting to an independent person about this illegal activity. So that person will communicate to the responsible person. Yeah. So in simple manner, you can explain independent person should be appointed as a whistleblower. If you notice any illegal activities like bribe, you can tell that illegal activity or wrongdoing thing to the person. That person will respond. This person will communicate to the responsible person. Clear? So altogether 4 points you have to remember under information and communication. First one, what is meant by information and communication? Controls and risk. The risk and controls must be communicated to the employees, and their roles and responsibilities must be communicated. What are the ways you can communicate it? What are the tools you can use? Email, intranet, and electronic notice boards. So 3 things, just remember. 4th point, whistleblower. Whistleblower. What is meant by whistleblower? That concern you have to remember. 5th one, monitoring. Most important thing. Just listen to me. Up to now, we discussed about the implementation. Okay, up to now, we discussed about the implementation. First, control environment. Board of directors should think about the positive. Board of directors should have a positive attitude towards the internal control system. Okay, they should think, yes, I need strong internal controls system in my organization. If they think only, next level activities can be done properly. So after that, you are going to implement the internal control. After that, you are going to assess the risk. Based on the risk assessment, you are going to implement the control activities. And those control activities must be communicated to the employees. These are the things anyways. Last one, let's say you have all these elements you consider and you have implemented the internal control in January, okay, or February, 6 months before you implement. Now July, June. Then implement karla emat yagatto, atida. Implement okkama consider karla rasanta effective internal controls to okkama implement kar. Ekane Intent objective, January implement करा, January में एक outcome achieve होना, January February March achieve होना. So that is sufficient or not? With that point, can you stop your internal control process, internal control activities? You can't. Time to time, these risks are changed. Okay? Existing risks will be not available in the future, and new risks will come to the picture, and you have to review. Time to time, you have to review whether some controls you no need to implement further. So these things must be properly monitored, which means these things must be reviewed. So at regular interval, organization should review the internal control process. Okay. For that purpose, sometimes management itself they review, or else they will appoint internal auditor. Or they know internal auditor. Internal auditor responsible. They have to. We will discuss data also there. They have to review the internal control process and identify the weaknesses, and they should give recommendations. Internal controls. So some companies. Some companies have management itself, they will do the internal control review process. Some companies they have internal auditors. Internal auditors also in-house internal auditors there. Some companies having in-house internal auditors. Some companies are outsourced some audit firms to do the internal audit. So main purpose of internal auditor monitoring means review. At regular interval, you have to review your internal control process. Okay. There should be a process for regular monitoring of the effectiveness of internal controls and other components in the internal control system. Review should be made regularly by management and at least annually by the board of directors or audit committee. Reviews can be done by management. Management itself, reviews should be done by management. Okay. Management can use internal auditors to do the review. Okay, don't misunderstand. Internal auditors responsible to review currently. But finally, management instruction management ignorance appointed. Okay, don't misunderstand that. Okay, management is the responsible person to do the review at regular interval. At least once a year, board of directors. Final responsibilities with board of directors. Okay, ultimate responsible board of directors. Whatever activities in relation to internal controls, ultimate responsibility is board of directors. Operational responsibilities. Okay, if operation implement the board of directors will implement ideas there are. Board of directors finance statement they will finance statement prepare. But finance director responsible finance statement. Annual reporting directors responsibility assign करें. अब finance director they will prepare करें. And then क्या prepare करना है कि responsible है क्या किन बोला? He is the responsible. He will do the work through management. Okay. Likewise, internal controls also. Internal controls responsible also with board of directors, final responsible. But they will implement, they will design and implement through management. Delegate karna management. Management will perform, but final responsibility will with board of directors. So likewise, here review also. Management should do the review regularly. Management itself can do, or else they can appoint internal auditor. Okay. What are the outcome of review of the system? May be any of the following. What are the outcomes you will? What are the outcomes you will get after reviewing the internal controls? Okay. Here I have given outcomes. After getting the outcomes, what are the subsequent actions we have to take? Okay. So first we will discuss the outcome. After that we will discuss the subsequent actions. Controls that have not been properly implemented. First thing, whatever design controls, whether whatever controls designed, whether those controls are properly implemented or not. Design කරලා තියෙනවා, ඒක implement කරලා තියෙනවද නැද්ද? If not implemented properly, that must be highlighted. Okay. Let's say finance manager approval or finance controller approval. This is the design internal control. Then they have to check. They have to check. They have to take 1 month payment vouchers and payment details, and they have to check whether finance manager has approved or not. Design is there. They have designed properly, but while they are checking, they observe finance manager has not been approved. Then they have to report controls that have not been properly implemented. Controls that are not fulfilling their intended purpose because of design weakness in control. Okay. Controls are implemented. Controls are designed. Sustainable. Because first of all, you have to understand each and every outcome. Don't get confused. If you are confused, just ask me. I will explain later again. Controls that have not been properly implemented. What is meant by properly implemented? You have designed finance manager work, but when you are checking the payment vouchers and invoices, finance manager has not approved. Or else, if you take 20 transactions per month, out of that, only 5 transactions are approved, 15 transactions are not approved. Then that will come under this category. Clear? Clear? Controls that are not fulfilling their intended purpose because of design weakness in control. What is meant by this design weakness in control? I will give example. This example again we will discuss later part of this session. Design weaknesses. Let's say one control is there. More than 50,000 payment must be approved by the finance controller. Always I am taking this payment process because that's the easiest process. Okay, you can understand, you can imagine easy. More than 50,000 payments must be approved by the finance control. It's the control they have decided. What is the objective of that control, internal control? More than 50,000 payments must not have any mistakes or any fraud activities must not be included. Must be happen in this more than 50,000 payments. The thing. Let's say supplier A. Supplier A, we have to pay 70,000. Okay, we have to pay 70,000 for supplier A. If account assistant or accountant generates one payment voucher with 70,000, then that payment voucher will be approved by the finance control. While more than 50,000 payment must be approved by the finance control. Clear there? Then their objective will be achieved. Let's say if that payment 70,000 payment, in order to make that payment 70,000, if account clerks or account assistant generates 3-4 payment vouchers, let's say 25,000, 25,000, 20,000. Okay, then each payment voucher contains below 50,000. Then do you need to send that payment voucher to the finance manager? According to the control, you don't need to send. But finally, objective is failed. They don't, control is failed because they did not achieve the objective. Control activity. What is the objective? If you make the payment above 50,000, you have to get the approval from finance control. To whom you are paying? To a single supplier. Okay. Second scenario also you are paying single supplier, but you are not getting approval from the finance control. Whether in the second scenario, did you achieve your objective? No. You have designed, but that control has not achieved the intended objective. Then what you should do? What should you do? Next process, you have to revise you have to redesign your control. But how you can redesign? If you make the payment to single supplier, irrespective of if you make to single supplier, if you make payment to single supplier, if that amount is more than 50,000, then it must be approved by the finance control. That's how you have to redesign your control. Okay, so that point will come under this outcome. Clear it? Clear that? Do you need to explain it? Do I need to explain it again? Clear it? New risks have emerged and there are insufficient controls for dealing with them. When you implementing the controls in January, these risks were not there. Now, these risks are there. So now you have to create new internal controls to mitigate those risks. Some existing controls are no longer required because of circumstances have changed. What examples are there? January risk එක දැන් නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ January controls එක දැන් applicable කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ because those risks are not available currently. So no need. If risks are not available means you don't need to implement the controls. So you have to remove those controls from your list. Information about controls is not reported to the relevant individuals. Information communication. You have designed this. You have implemented, but that has not been communicated to the relevant people. If you don't communicate to the relevant people, that will not be the effective internal controls because you need their support to implement effectively. Okay. So these are the outcomes. These are the few outcomes you can get from the review. Once you identify these outcomes, what are the subsequent actions you should take? Controls that have not been properly implemented. If controls are not implemented properly, what are the actions? What is the action you have to take? The individual responsible for the controls will be informed of failure. We have to take. What's the example we have taken here? Finance manager has not approved the payment vouchers. Then immediately we have to inform the finance manager. See, finance manager, out of that 20 transactions in this month, you have approved only 5. 15 transactions were not approved by you. Immediately you have to inform the responsible person. Controls that not fulfilling their intended purpose because of design weakness in control. The managers responsible for the control should design more effective controls, like our supply payment. So, if you make the payment more than 50,000, finance controller will have the same scenario, same supplier, but you are going to break the payment vouchers into 2, 3, 25, 25, 20. Then it will not fall into this category, this control design. So your control objective is not achieved. So you have to redesign the control activity. New risks have emerged and there are insufficient controls for dealing with them. The managers responsible for risk assessment, the managers responsible for the risk assessment. This is part of the risk assessment process. Risk assessment should reveal the adequacy of the process for risk identification, analysis, and evaluation. They should analyze the new risk, identify the new risk, and they should place the control against those risks. Some existing controls are no longer required because of circumstances have changed. What is the subsequent action? New risks have emerged and there are insufficient controls for dealing with them. Finally, communication point. Responsible management should be informed accordingly. Relevant, we have to inform to relevant people their roles and responsibility and risk and controls. That's a subsequent action. So you should remember these things. Outcome of review. What are the subsequent action you should take? Clear this? Any doubt or any clarification you need? With that, elements are over. Any doubts on elements or parts of internal controls? What are the elements? Control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication, and monitoring. What is meant by control environment? Environment which controls operate. What are the important points you should remember under control environment? First of all, you should remember, first thing should come to your mind if anyone says control environment, board of head of operation, head of organization. Their actions, their attitude, their functions, and their culture, their awareness about internal controls, their thought, okay, their style, their attitude about internal controls. First, they should think we need strong internal control environment. Okay. If they think like that, then that's a positive, strong control environment. Second one, risk assessment. What are the things we have to risk? What are the things we have to assess in the risk assessment process? Internal, external risk. Internal, external risk available in relation to the organization and frequency of those risks, which means occurrence. Frequency of occurrence of those risks, or else you can say probability of happening those risks and impact of those risks. You have to analyze, you have to assess those risks, and you have to design the control activities. Third one, control activities. Simply you can remember what are the internal controls we have discussed in the business process. Approval, accuracy, but separately we have control procedures or control activities. We will discuss later separately. So for the time, just remember examples what we have discussed on the business process. What's the fourth one? Information and communication. What are the things we have to communicate and inform to the employees? Once you hear the word called information and communication, first of all, you should think, you should get your mind. Risk and controls should be communicated to the relevant people in the organization, and roles and responsibility of relevant people in relation to the internal control. Okay, top to bottom, bottom to up across the organization, and tools of communication that you should remember. And last point under information and communication, most important thing. This will go. Fifth one, monitoring. Monitoring means management is responsible for. Final responsible is with board of directors, but management at regular interval they should review the. Management is responsible to review the internal control process. Management should review internal control process at regular interval. Board of directors or audit committee should review at least once a year. At least once a year. If they review more than 2 times or 3 times, that is okay. It's a good practice, but at least once a year they have to review. Under monitoring, you have to know about what are the outcomes, few outcomes we can gain, and what are the subsequent actions we have to implement based on the outcome. Clear? So next topic, types of controls. Types of controls. Next topic. Third topic. First topic we discuss objectives of internal control. Second topic we discuss components of internal control. Third topic, types of internal control. Types of internal control. There are 2 aspects. We are going to discuss types of internal control in 2 aspects. Okay. Here, first aspect. We have 2 aspects. First one is we are going to discuss now. First aspect you can link to your objectives. Internal control objectives. First aspect you can directly link to the objectives of internal control. Okay. What are the objectives? Tell me again. What are the objectives? What are the objectives of internal controls? You are in. Better you person than my woman. He was more prepared. Something came. What are the objectives? 11 class later. I don't get any question. First one. एक के ना तो नेगेटिव पर्सन वाला है राइट सही क्या आते क्या का पर्सन है आते क्या objectives of internal control enhance reliability of financial reporting efficiency and effectiveness of business operations. So based on this we can classify the internal controls. First one, what's the first objective? Enhance financial reporting, reliability of financial reporting. So first control, financial controls. Second controls, financial controls, operational controls, compliance controls. What are the examples of financial controls? Again. The keyword was a wave of the financial control correct. What are the financial controls? What are the financial controls? The curriculum keyword approval of finance management. Financial controls. What is? Sales process again financial controls. Let's say invoice generation, sales order preparation. If we take purchase process, GRN preparation, approval of GRN, dispatch not approval. All these are finance controls. Examples: GRN approval, payment vouchers approval, bank reconciliations, So these are the few examples. Okay. Bank approval, bank preparation. Okay, the lot of points controls are there. What are the operational controls? Maintenance of vehicles. If you are a distributor, you need vehicles. Lorries you need. So you have to keep the lorry in proper conditions. So maintenance of vehicle. In order to distribute your products without any interruption, you have to maintain your vehicles in proper manner. And maintenance of machines. Okay. Maintenance of machines. Machines also same thing. If you are a manufacturer, then in order to produce your units of your production, you have to maintain your machines in proper condition. So at regular interval, you have to do the same. Okay. That is related to the operational controls. CCTV. CCTV fixing. Fix the CCTV. That's also operation. Like a financial remaining CCTV fix करने का. Why we have to fix the CCTV? Why we have to control purpose? What is the objective? Why we should fix CCTV? CCTV camera. CCTV camera. The safeguard. A safety purpose. Why we should appoint a security guard? For control. Okay. So these are related to the operation. These are not related to the financial things, not compliance things. These are the operational. In order to run your operation, these things are needed. Compliance. Compliance controls. Food companies. Food manufactured oil. I'm writing in the short form. Food manufacturing companies should comply food safety related of food hygiene. Food safety of food hygiene related compliances. Banks should comply central bank guidelines. Okay, banks should comply the central bank guidelines. Capital adequacy ratios. Those are there. No? So, food manufacturing company should comply the food safety related compliances. Okay. Food manufacturer company should comply food safety related compliances. Whatever controls implemented in relation to fulfill the compliance requirement, those controls are compliance related controls. So, example, food manufacturer company should comply the food safety related controls, compliances, which means hygiene. Okay, food hygiene related compliances, and medicine manufacturer company should comply their compliances. Components name guidelines, so they should comply their guidelines, and banks should comply central bank guidelines. So these are related to, in order to comply those compliances, if companies implement controls, those controls for compliance controls. Clear that? Some examples. Okay. Types of internal control. Aspect 1. Financial controls, operational controls, compliance controls. Financial internal control should taken together reduce the risk of errors of fraud in accounting systems. Financial controls mean the purpose of financial control is reduce the mistakes or errors of frauds in the financial reporting, which means we have to enhance the reliability of financial reporting without any mistakes, without any errors, without any fraud things. Examples: an authorized person approves payments before being paid, preparing reconciliation, bank reconciliation, and approving them, establishing budgets and requiring adherence to them to prevent overspending. Okay. Operational controls. Operational controls are controls that operational controls are because duplicated. Okay. Operational controls are controls that reduce the risk of loss of efficiency of effectiveness of business process. In other terms, enhance the reliability of effectiveness and efficiency of the business process. What are the controls? Delivery vehicles should be given maintenance inspection at regular intervals. CCTV cameras, security guards are employed. Compliance controls. So, here I have highlighted the objective of each controls. What is the objective of financial controls? Reduce the mistakes, errors to fraud, or reduce the errors in the financial report. What is the operational control efficiency objective? Enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of internal control. And compliance control. Compliance controls are implemented to reduce the risk of failure to comply with laws and regulations. What is the objective of compliance controls? Ensure the compliance of laws and regulations. Okay, to mitigate the risk of failure to comply the laws and regulations. The nature of controls varies with the nature of the laws and regulations. For example, controls to ensure compliance with food hygiene regulations will be different from controls in banks to comply with anti-money laundering. In simple manner, you can understand if any company implement controls, any companies implement the controls in order to ensure the compliances in relation to their business operation, those controls called compliance controls. By implementing the compliance controls, they should reduce failure of non-compliances. That's the objective. What is the objective of financial controls? To mitigate the errors and mistakes, okay, in the financial reporting. What's the objective of compliance operation controls? Reduce the losses of efficiency, which means in other terms, enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of business operation. What's the objective of compliance control? Reduce the risk of failure of compliances. Ensure the compliance of the business organization. So the objective you should remember, and second one, examples you should remember under each category of terms. Each category of controls. So we will have a break 15 minutes, and after that we will discuss the second aspect.
They made but ada ABD lah. They made.
Shall I start? Our fourth topic. Second aspect of type of control. First aspect we discuss financial compliance, financial operation and compliance control. Second aspect also we have three types of controls. First one is second aspect also we have three types of controls. Number one, preventive controls. Second one, detective controls. And number three, there are two aspects. Actually, there are three aspects. And one and IT controls also there. That one we will discuss separately. First aspect, financial, operational, compliance controls. Second aspect of types of controls: preventive, directive, corrective. What is meant by preventive controls? What is meant by preventive? If I say preventive controls, what's the first thing you will get into your mind? What is meant by preventive controls? In simple manner, if I say before errors are happen, if you can stop that error, those controls called preventive controls. You can prevent that error or mistake. It has a simple definition. Before errors are happen or mistakes are happen, if you can prevent, which means stop. If you can stop that error by implementing the controls, those controls called preventive controls. What are the examples of preventive controls? What are the examples of preventive controls? What are the examples you can say of preventive controls? Before errors happening, or before errors are happening, if you can prevent or if you can stop those errors by implementing controls, those controls called preventive controls. So now, what are the examples you can provide for preventive controls? Okay. I will take one scenario. We will take a payment process. We will take a payment process. We will take a payment process. And we will discuss these two controls. Okay. We will take a payment process and we will discuss this type of control to that payment process. Let's say what are the activities involved? What are the activities you know about payment process? What are the activities involved in the payment process? Tell me what's the first? They didn't discuss about the payment process. Okay, but what are the activities to know about the payment process? First activity. In order to make the payment, technical process only I am going to tell here. Okay, so it's not a you no need to understand the payment process, but here you have to understand about what is meant by preventive, directive, and corrective. Okay, that concept you have to understand. So here, if you take a payment process, don't write immediately. Plus, we will discuss these things, and after that, once you get to know about the preventive, directive controls nature, then you can note it down. Let's say first you have to receive the invoice. First, in order to make the payment, first you should have a source document. Source document to make the payment. So receive the invoice. Create payment voucher. Okay. Based on the invoice, create payment voucher. The creator of payment voucher, which means preparer of payment voucher, must be signed. He must sign. Preparer of the payment voucher must sign the payment voucher document. So here, prepared by signature. Prepared by signature. Okay. Prepared by. The person who has prepared the payment voucher must sign in the payment voucher document. Okay. Clear? Based on the invoice, he has prepared the payment also. And check the payment box. Okay, check the payment. Let's say here prepared by account assistant. Okay, his signature must be available in the payment box account assistant. Let's say here check by accountant, his signature also should be available in the payment option. And next step, approved by approval of finance manager. Or else let's say approval of payment vouchers, approval of payment vouchers, approved by finance manager. And director authorize and sign the check. The simple process of payment. Simple process. Don't think too much about whether this process is correct or wrong. It's a simple process. Here, our purpose is we have to identify the preventive and deductive controls. So, director sign, authorized and sign the check. Payment made. After the payment, what's the procedure? Now payment settled. Generally, payment was made, and now end of the month, bank reconciliation. Is prepared. Bank reconciliation is prepared, and that bank reconciliation must be approved by the authorized person, checked by the authorized person. So here is the payment. This is the payment process. So here we are going to discuss about the preventive and deductive controls. What is the preventive controls definition? Normal definition, simple definition. If you prevent the errors before taking place by implementing the controls, those controls called preventive controls. Okay. So here in this process, okay, in this process, where the error can be happen, in this process, where the error can be happen. Let's say, the question is, in this process, there are few steps are there, no? in this process where the error can be at which point error can be at. What is the definition of preventive controls? Before error is happened, we should identify the error and rectify. Okay, we have to identify the error. Okay, so then in this process, where the transaction is taking place, as the transaction is taking place, transaction is payment. The payment process, payment is a transaction. Okay. Except invoice amount is 100,000. Okay, invoice actual amount is 100,000. Now you have to make the payment. 100,000 payment only you have to make. You can't make 120 or 150. But mistakenly, account assistant has prepared the payment voucher for 110,000. Okay. You have to clear it. He has prepared the payment voucher mistakenly 100,000, 110,000. So here, when accountant checks this payment voucher, he did not identify this 110 mistake. Okay, here he has not identified. Here, but when FM approves this one, he has identified this mistake. So here he has identified. Sometimes accountant, let's assume accountant also identify this mistake. Accountant and FM, both of them have not identified, but when authorized the payment, director has identified. Okay. Clear scenarios, either accountant or FM or director. One of them identify the mistakes, these 10,000 mistakes. Before paying the amount. So here error was not taking place. Okay. So before making the payment, they have identified this. One of them have identified this. One of them has identified this error. So these controls called preventive controls. Okay. Before transaction happen, you have stopped the error. Okay. Before transaction happen, you have stopped the error by implementing these controls. These controls called preventive controls. Prevent the error. Clear? Here you have made the payment. Transaction was taken place. Here transaction was taken place. Already you have made the payment. All these three people have not identified the error, this 10,000 error they have not identified. Mistakenly, they have made the payment. But at the time of bank reconciliation, or at the time of reconciliation, either bank reconciliation or invoice and payment reconciliation, let's say invoice and payment reconciliation. Okay, bank reconciliation or invoice and payment reconciliation. At the end of the month, they are checking invoice and payment reconciliation. Okay, let's say either bank reconciliation prepared or invoice. Invoice versus payment reconciliation. Okay, payment reconciliation. After the payment was made only, they can do these things. Some reconciliation activities they are doing, either bank reconciliation or invoice versus payment reconciliation. through this control, if they identify this error, those control called preventive controls. Sorry, reactive controls. So after the error was taken place, if that error was identified, means deduction, identified, those controls called through the controls, those controls called deductive controls. After the error was taken place and that error is identified by the controls, those controls called deduction controls or deductive controls. Deductive controls. Again, I want to emphasize this point. After error is taken place, if that error is identified by the controls, those controls called deductive controls. Here, this error is identified after making the payment. Okay, this error is identified after making the payment. Now, job was done. Error was done. So after the error only, you have identified that. After the error happened only, you have identified the error through the control. So those controls called deductive controls. Preventive controls, before happening the error, if you stop the error through the controls, those controls called preventive controls. Clear? You can take this example to explain these things. Accounting bank reconciliation or invoice and payment reconciliation. Lot of reconciliations are coming under deductive controls. Here my concept taken. Clear? So here under in payment process, error or transaction is payment. So if you find mistakes or errors by implementing controls before happening that transaction or errors, then those controls for preventive controls. After happening the transaction, if you find the errors through the controls, those controls for deductive controls. Then what is meant by corrective controls? What is meant by corrective controls? Corrective controls means errors, whatever errors you find through the deductive controls, okay, whatever errors you find through the deductive controls, you should not allow those errors. You should not allow those errors to happen repeatedly. Okay, you should not allow those errors to happen in future as well. Preventive control, before happening the error, you are going to prevent. Deductive controls, after happening the error, you have deducted. Now corrective means deducted controls. Whatever you deducted, those controls you should not allow to happen in future also. Okay, you have to stop the future errors. How you can stop? How you can stop? By implementing the controls. You have already found the errors. By implementing the controls, you can stop to happen in future. Clear? So, for example, journal entries. You have found errors. Now, you are going to pass the journal entry. You are going to correct the error. Let's say inventory reconciliation, inventory physical and inventory book balance are differences. We have found these differences. Inventory physical balances, physical quantity, let's say physical balances and inventory book balances are differences. Then inventory verification current preventive or reductive. Verify the inventory balances and reconciling with book balances is preventive or reductive. Verifying the physical balances and comparing with the book balances this control we can consider as preventive control or reactive control. Preventive, reactive. So reactive control. You are comparing two variables, balances and physical. After performing the physical count, if you find any differences, okay, if you find differences, that error or that mistake or that transaction was already taken place. Now you have to compare and you have to reconcile. Reconcile. If you want to pass any entries, you have to pass the entries. So that entries corrective controls. Clear? The corrective controls means in future you should not allow to happen the same mistake. Okay? The same mistake should not be allowed to happen in the future. Clear? So the same mistakes you should not allow to happen in the future. In order to stop the repetitive mistakes in the future, you are going to implement certain corrective measures. Those corrective measures are called corrective controls. Okay. Stand already. So, types of internal controls. Second aspect, preventive controls, reactive controls, corrective controls. Preventive controls are controls that are designed to prevent operational errors from happening in the first place. Okay, before happening. Normal terms you can say before happening the errors, mistakes. Some examples of preventive controls are segregation of duties, pre-approval of actions, transactions, access controls, checking invoices received from suppliers, again, goods received notes, supervision of employees at work. So lot of examples you can say. Three-way matching in sales process. If you take three-way matching also before making the payment, you have to check the documents. So that is also, if you take a sales process, three-way matching before sending the getting signature from customer, preventive detective. Getting signature from customer after sending the goods, you should get the signature from the customer. In dispatch note, you have to get the signature note. So, what type of control? Preventive detective. So preventive. Why? Why we should get the signature from customer? There are two objectives. One is before sending the invoice, we have to confirm whether goods have been delivered or not. Other one is goods have been delivered, that acknowledgement. That acknowledgement also. So let's say when it comes to invoice perspective, before sending the invoice, we should ensure whether goods have been reached to the customer or not. So before happening the transaction, we have implemented the control. So the relative control. Likewise, Lot of things are there, preventive control. Just remember 3 or 4 examples. Okay. But main thing is you should remember before happening the errors and mistakes, which means before happening the transaction, before happening the transaction, if you have any controls, those controls are preventive controls. Detective controls. Detective controls are controls that are designed to detect errors once they have happened. Okay, after happening the transactions or errors, carrying out bank reconciliation, counting physical inventory in stores and comparing actual quantities, providing management with regular reports comparing budget performance with actual performance. Budget performance and actual performance. Budget and actual comparison. That is also control. Okay, what is the objective of comparing budget and actual? What is the objective of comparing budget and budget report with actual reports? It's also control. If you want to achieve the target profit, you should have a budget. Let's say P&L, profit and loss budget. You want to achieve 10 million profit in 25-26 year. Your organization wants to achieve 10 million profit in 25-26 year. Then budget take put back out the check out that. Right? So every quarter or every month they have to analyze whether annual budget should be divided into quarterly budget. Quarterly budget should be, if they can, quarterly budget can be divided into annual monthly budget. At least they should have a quarterly budget. Okay, so then based on the actual performance, they should compare the quarterly budget and quarterly actual performance. If that company is in line with quarterly budget and actual reports, they have indication they can achieve the annual budget. If their actual budget, actual quarterly performance and quarterly budget is, if they notice any deviations, significant negative deviations, then they have to take precautions. Which means in order to achieve the annual budget, what are the things they have to, what are the actions they have to take, what are the strategies they have to develop. So those things should be discussed from first quarter onwards. Okay, so those are deductive. So after happening the transaction only, you are going to compare first quarter budget with actual reports. So those are deductive controls. Comparing the budget and actual deductive controls. Let's say first quarter, your annual profit target is 10 million. First quarter, let's say somewhere around 2.5 million. Each quarter 2.5 million. Let's say 2.5 million is the first quarter budget profit. Budget and profit is 2.5 million. But your actual performance indicates only 1.5 million. 1 million shortage is there. Comparing actual and budget deductive control. After 1.1 million shortage, second quarter, you are analyzing what are the mistakes they have done in first quarter. Why we have not achieved, we couldn't achieve the first quarter budget. And if they rectify that mistakes in the second quarter, that is corrective controls. After, by rectifying those mistakes, if they achieve second quarter budget, then that rectifying steps called or actions called corrective controls. Comparing actual and budget, deductive. After comparison, if they have any negative impact because of their mistakes, those mistakes, if they rectify through implementing the controls, those controls called corrective controls. Corrective controls. Corrective controls are controls that are designed to minimize the effect of errors or risk events. Examples of corrective controls are as follows: backing up the computer at the end of each day and storing the backup remote location. Backup was also corrective controls. Because of previous bad experience only, they have started to back up the information and data. So this is the one type of example. Another type of example is journal entry passing, correcting the entries. So those are the examples. So after deducting the control errors, if you implement any control to stop the repetitive mistakes in future, the same mistakes in future, those controls called corrective controls. With that, 4 topics are over in the internal control. So first, you have 2 tubes, internal controls. Both tubes are have a product, LMS. First tube contains 4 topics, 2 types, objective and control elements. Second tube contains 8 topics. Altogether, you have 12 topics. So we will move on to second tube. So second tube okay, no problem. Just write down this process and just understand what is meant by reductive and preventive. So notes are separately you have the tube. So don't bother about the notes. First of all, you have to identify. So you should separately highlight preventive controls in this process and separately you have to highlight the reductive controls. So fifth topic is control procedures. Next topic we are going to discuss about control procedures. What is meant by control procedures? Already we discussed this control activities. Control elements, internal control elements. We discussed about control activities. That is equal to control procedures. Control activities or control procedures. Control procedures means is same as what we have learned in business process. Each and every business process. As a last point, we discussed about internal controls. So those internal controls are equal to this control procedures. So those internal controls, whatever internal controls we discuss in the business process, those internal controls, all these internal controls we can classify out of this control procedures. I will give control procedures. Whatever internal controls we can classify into out of this control procedure category. There are certain categories. There are 8 categories. Okay, there are 8 categories, control activity procedures categories. Whatever controls we learn in the business process, we can classify into out of one of these control procedure category. Clear? So first one, segregation of units. Second one, physical controls. First one is segregation of duties. You have to remember these things. Segregation of duties, physical controls. So why we are learning these control procedures? After learning this control procedure, you should get the knowledge. You know about the example of controls. If I ask sales process related controls, you can provide 5 or 6 controls, you can say. If I ask purchase related controls, you can say 5 or 6 controls. If I ask cash management, you can say. So likewise, payroll process and other 3 processes I will give. But payroll process or inventory management process or PP process, you can take controls involved in those processes. So those controls can be classified out of this one category, out of these 8 categories, out of one of this category. Okay, out of one of this category, you can classify those controls. First one is segregation of duties, second one physical controls. Third one, approval and authorization. Fourth one, management controls. Fifth one, supervision. Sixth one, governance controls. Seventh one, direct medical controls. Eighth one, personal controls. So whatever internal controls you have learned, you can categorize those internal controls one of these 8 categories. Okay, now you can try. Let's say sales, in the sales process, GRN must be sales order must be prepared by one person, and dispatch note must be prepared by one person, and delivery part should be done by one person, and sales order should be received by one person, and invoice must be created by one person, sales invoice. What is that control? Which category? Segregation of duties. Segregation, duties segregated. The duties are segregated. Sales order received by one person. and dispatch store manager and storekeeper, store staff will involve in the dispatch process. Invoice will be generated by another person. So segregation of duties. Physical controls. Inventory verification. In the BP, fixed asset verification. You have verified physical assets, availability of physical assets, number of physical assets, and that we have that physical asset, number of physical assets, you are going to compare with book balances or FAR. Okay, comparison. Whether recorded assets are physically available or not. Those will come under physical controls. Inventory also same. Whether recorded inventories are physically available or not. Okay, clear? Whether recorded assets are physically available or not. Recorded PP, property plant equipments, whether physically available or not. Whether recorded inventories are physically available or not. That comparison. That comparison is also internal control. That control will come under physical control. CCTV camera fixing and security guard appointment. Those also will come under physical control. Okay, likewise. Approval and authorization. Payment voucher approval, bank reconciliation authorization, bank reconciliation approval. So whatever approval process, approval in the internal controls will come under approval and authorization. If you check the accuracy of amounts, those controls will come under arithmetical control. Okay. So likewise, whatever controls you know, whatever controls you study under business process, those controls you can classify in one of these 8 categories. Okay, one by one we will discuss. Control procedures. Segregation of duties already we discussed. What is meant by segregation of duties? Segregation of duties means one key activity. Listen to me. Segregation of duties means one key activity should be done by one person. Okay, this is one definition. Another way you can say one person cannot perform more than one key activities in the process. Here, that's mean segregation of duties. Duties should be separated between 2 or more people. Duties should be separated between 2 or more people. Why we are separating? This means that the same person is unable to perform 2 key tasks in the process. Payment voucher create करने के नाम payment एक करना है. उन्होंने लिखने या हम payment voucher create कर ला या हम approve कर ला या हम check कर ला या हम payment कर ला या हम bank transaction कराना होगा. So payment voucher should be created by one person, which means that must be prepared by account assistant, that must be checked by accountant, that must be approved by FM, that must be authorized by director, and payment can be made by cashier. So 3-4 people are involved. That's called segregation of duties. Same person, one person cannot involve more than one key task. Duties are separated. Activities will be separated among the 2 or more people. Segregation of duties. Segregation of duties means that a mistake by one person can be identified and corrected by someone else. In the payment process, if preparer makes any mistake, checking person will deduct or approving person will deduct. It also makes it much more difficult for an individual to commit fraud. If the same person is involved in payment process, he can easily make fraud. He can easily involve in the fraud activity in the payment process. If duties are segregated among the people, then he cannot easily involve in the. There are also, we can't say we can eliminate the fraud, we can reduce. They are also much more difficult. Here we have not included, it cannot be done. Okay, much more difficult. Difficult to involve in the fraud activities. Don't misunderstand. Segregation of duties will make zero frauds. Okay. Fraud 100% we will discuss later. Why we can't eliminate 100%. It's much more difficult for an individual to commit fraud because the individual has responsibility for only a part of the overall task, not the entire task. For example, the person authorizing an item expenditure should not be the same person who makes the payment. Clear? What is meant by segregation duties? Second one, physical control. Physical controls, there are two types of controls. One is physical protection for an asset, such as security guard, lock on a door, and swift cards for entry of building. Security guard appointments, CCTV, those are physical controls. Physical protection of foreign asset. Physically, you are protecting an asset. Those controls also physical controls. Second category, actual existence of an asset. What is meant by actual existence? You are comparing physical balance of inventory and book balances. You are comparing physical balance of PP and book balances, FAR balances. The accounting records may show that organization owns certain assets, such as equipment or inventory. The physical control would be regular check to make sure that assets exist, as shown in the accounting records. So physical controls, you should remember there are two types of controls. One is physical existence, another one is physical protection. Authorization and approval controls. That's a simple thing. All transactions, which means approval and authorization. All transactions should require authorization or approval by an appropriate responsible person. Authorized person must approve the payment. Authorized person must approve the sales invoice. Likewise, authorized person must approve. Authorized person should give the approval for the process. Authorization limit should be specified. For example, managers at certain level in the organization should not authorize spending above 50,000. I want to tell one thing. Some organization, okay, some organization, they implement hierarchy, amounts level hierarchy. If more than 20, let's say for example, more than 50%, accountant cannot approve. That must be approved by the financial control based on the transaction and volume of transaction and value of the transaction. Okay. Based on those these things, they will give the hierarchy of approval. The small company, all the transaction must be approved by the director. In morning, I have taken example. You should approve. If in your company, you should approve all the transactions without this hierarchy. If you take a large organization, director will sign on the back. So they will give the hierarchy. Above 50, for example, above 50,000 must be approved by the accountant. Above 100,000 must be approved by the finance manager. Above 100,000 cannot approved by the accountant. That should be approved by the finance manager. Above 500,000, 1 to 500,000, finance manager should approve. Above 500,000, finance controller or group CFO must approve. More than 1 million should be approved by the director. Likewise, they will give hierarchy. Management controls. What is meant by management controls? Managers provide control through analysis and review of performance. Understand the definition. Managers provide control through analysis and review performance. management controls, business performance review. First, we will read this theory. After that, I will explain. Management controls procedures are controls applied by management. Management controls applied by the management. Management controls are often applied by means of management reports. For example, you can take budget and actual reports, budget reports. Okay, just imagine budget reports. Okay, these may be regular and routine reports or reports provided on demand on when circumstances require the production of a report. Just imagine the budget report. Who prepares the budget? Normally management, finance division will prepare the budget. So let's say in the management report as budget report. First, management reports means budget and actual report. Those are the management report. Business performance review. Annual budget is there. After first quarter, you should review whether budget actual performance are in line with budget. Business performance review. So first, you have to prepare the reports. Management should prepare the reports. Second one, management responds to reports indicating that an aspect of operation is out of control. If actual performance is deviated from the budget, if it is positive deviation is okay. 2.5 million quarterly budget 3.5 million actual happy. If it is a negative, out of control, if it is negative impact is there, then you have to take certain decisions, certain strategies to mitigate that problem, mitigate that risk. Management responses to reports indicating that aspect of operations is out of control. Actual performance is outside the predetermined acceptable tolerance limit. Okay, 2.5 million. So your predetermined target, quarterly target. If it is 2.4, you have a tolerant level. Tolerant level also you should have 10% plus 10% minus 10%. So beyond that, you have prashne. Okay, so that's the meaning given here. Actual performance is outside the predetermined acceptable tolerance limit. Okay, or tolerance range. Management may use judgment in deciding how to investigate a report showing actual performance is significantly different from acceptable levels. First, these are the steps in the management controls. You should remember, management controls are business review, business performance review. Normally, you just imagine budget. Budget is target. It's link with budget budget compared to actual performance. First, they have to prepare the management reports. First, they have to compare with the actual performance. After that, if they note any negative deviations, in order to overcome that problem, they should take strategies. How to investigate a report showing actual performance is significantly different from acceptable levels, and what controls measures may be appropriate to deal with the problem. What other controls we have to implement? What other strategies to overcome these shortages? Okay. So with that, we will stop the theory part. I want to discuss. So if you have any problem with the group allocation, let me know today itself or tomorrow. Because I can use on the back, but I got recommendation akawa. Take a base color on I for group that. Other was for group change on the van. Like a point akawa, take a consider color I for group proposals, origins are coming here. Take up them at a passe. Monoli issues Tiana, Ado here. Tuesday, Wednesday, again, change color about you may take a group time. Otherwise, you can decide your own group. That is better. So, take one time decide current. Over request over matter allocate current. Allocate card of passe, Pasar Paspara change in the back. I can't call the regularly in the Matanan and it will come 880. 2, 3 betters also. Huh? Group overlap with another, mom with another group again. Take okay.
Yes.
One person has come. So because of that, I will rechange the group again. Okay, small things I want to rechange. So again, I will say today night. Okay, today night I will say. Okay, again I will resend. Okay, again I will resend that amended group details today night or tomorrow morning. Okay, I will say. Just go through it. If you have any comments or concerns, just let me know tomorrow itself. Yeah, otherwise, so that's it. The comment tag lava, I don't consider the company. Content of group assignment. 50% will be covered your continuous assessment, 50% will be covered your final examination. So final examination both here only. Okay. 50% continuous assessment, group assignment, individual assignment, module test. So I won't give module test. So that 10% also I will cover here. Okay. 40%, 20% for presentation, 20% for report. Presentation marks will be very depend on your presentation. Okay, if you take a group, let's say group 1, if you have 10 students, presentation marks will be very based on your presentation. But report marks will be given for it. Same marks will be given for it. So 40% individual assignment I will give later after group assignment I will give the individual assignment that will cover 10%. Scope of the work, each group repetitive questions in each group should select 2 business processes. If you take group 1, example group 1 group 1 should select 2 business processes. Participants should select 2 business processes of company, live company, ChatGPT company name live company, live company, and explain the process in detail. First of all, you have to explain the process. Let's say you have, my example, we have discussed 6 processes other than digitalization. Digitalization process name. We have discussed 6 processes. Out of that 6 processes, you can take 2 processes. Each group can take 2 processes and explain in detail. Objective, the overall objective is to analyze and discuss the business processes followed by the companies. Like given understandable name, followed by the companies. This includes activities followed. If you take sales, what are the activities followed by that company? Documents used, internal controls placed, challenges faced, and strategies adopted by the companies in relation to the relevant business process. This is very important thing. These are the things I have given. I have included here also with the marks. This will be enable the students to understand the practical application of business process. We have discussed the theoretical aspect last 6 classes. So now you have to implement practically those theoretical knowledge. Then we can discuss the company follow body slide changes based on the nature. What we have discussed here on the business process, general procedures. The analysis should be developed based on the information gathered from the selected company and other publicly available reports. If you have, you can get those information. Otherwise, you have to interview a person in that particular company. Details of discussions with the selected company and professionals should be documented in the report. You can just include the pictures also. Okay, as a annexes. No need to include in the main topic. They can include the as annexes, just use some pictures. Content of report. Title page. Introduction of the company and business. 5%, 5 mark. Because here I am going to give 100%. After that only I will allocate for 20%. Okay. Introduction of the company will discuss. Detailed explanation of the selected business process along with the flow charts and documents used by the company. 40 marks. Explanation about internal controls placed the relevant process. 10 marks. Challenges faced by the company in relation to the selected business process. 20. Strategies. 20. References. 5 marks. Altogether 10. That I will allocate 20%, which means accordingly I will allocate. The marks is the way to give the marks. And here I have given the guidelines about your report. Maximum you should not exceed 70 pages. That 17 pages will not contain executive and your title. Okay, without title and executive and conclusion, other main contents must be included within 17 pages. A title page and appendix also should not be included. Okay, these pictures, those things you can include under appendix. This is the format I have given. Reporting format and deadline is on 11th July. So we will discuss next class. So following class we will discuss and we will put a presentation date later. Okay. So the time is your report submission deadline is on 11th July. If you don't submit, 5 marks will be deducted. For your presentation, 20 minutes. Normally I will give 50. Yeah, normally I will give 50. 10 minutes presentation and 5 minutes question and answer session. But here, since you have 10 people in one group, I estimate 1.5 minutes for each person. Okay, 15 minutes and 5 minutes for question and answer. So you should limit your presentation maximum 20 to 25 minutes. Don't go beyond that. 10 groups here on it. Sorry, 8 groups are here on it. So time maker 30 minutes on which I got to. Don't go beyond 20 or 25 minutes. Sorry, 20 minutes. Okay, presentation 20 minutes. Maximum you can go 20 minutes. Maximum you can go up to 20 minutes. Clear? So presentation date we will discuss and we will confirm later. Any doubt? Only group doubt at the end. Short of today, right? Notes on audio. Any doubts? Any doubts on presentation? Clear? So with that we will conclude. Okay, anyway. Mark करता है? Lot of students have sent the answers good, and I have reviewed certain answers, and rest of things also I will review and give my comments. So I think somewhere around 20-25 students have sent. Send negative number here. Time here on next 1 week. Next week only I'm going to discuss those questions. So whatever answer I have reviewed, I'm okay with those answers. I don't know whether you have independently written or copy down, but certain answers are genuinely okay. But I noticed one point. Question number 11. Who is the answer? You forgot. You take it in. Or I thought mounting Mamu Baran, I thought. Question number 11. Whoever wrote answers, question number 11. It was same answer. Islam Mama convinced them, you take on the line here, no here. Because Madame Down, I get to take a who is the answer? Low price export at supplier selector and who is the answer? Say they got a purchase. Take a single line. The family with supplier and quick delivery. Even again, you can have somewhere same answers here. Yeah. But something different from my tube. Anyway, I can check that one. So that's the only my concern. That number 11. Others are okay. Others, certain people personally I have sent my comments. You have to elaborate further. Single line like you have to elaborate. Elaborate say the process just you have to elaborate for the single line, single word you have to write 1 or 2 lines. At least 2 lines you have to write. Briefly explain just 2 lines. Don't write too much. Okay, time based. So time shortage. And I will check this question number 11 again. But I don't remember. Again, I will say. So whoever wrote, I'm okay with those answers. Whoever not written, just try and send the answer. So another 7 people's answer I want to review. So I will review and send my questions.